Okie doke, so now we can get into the review proper of the Line-6 Pocket Pod. Okay, now what you see here is the package, believe it or not. None of these plugged in leads are included, so inside the box you get just the Pocket Pod. You get the pilot guide manual. You don't even get the full manual, you have to download that as a PDF. And you get a warranty card and a USB lead. You don't get the CD with the editor librarian software, and you don't even get the full manual, as I say. There are also 4 batteries that come with this unit, but I don't have them to show you as part of the package because my first Pocket Pod that I bought was dead on arrival. It was broken out of the box. It worked fine with batteries, but as soon as you plugged in a DC power supply, DC voltage was getting onto this stereo output, so that the only thing that came out of this output socket was massive DC hum. I took it back with the batteries in it. The guys in the shop took a fresh Pocket Pod out of its box, sealed in its bag. We swapped them over, and therefore the batteries ended up at the dealers with the returned unit. Okay, but you do get 4 batteries. So let's start and look around at the back. Okay, 1/4-inch jack guitar input, standard, but much like a guitar effects pedal, if you unplug it, it turns the unit off. Very useful if you're using with batteries. Okay. Next to that, 9-volt DC socket. Okay, I'm currently using this with a Behringer effects pedal, you know, the pedal board power supply. Works fine. I've also tried it with a generic pedal power supply, the type you buy from guitar shops for pedaling, you know, for powering about 6 or 8 pedals, and it worked fine with that as well. So the good news is any negative tip polarity Boss style DC power supply will work to power this unit. Next to the DC socket you've got the main stereo direct headphone out. As we've already talked about, it's this dreaded mini jack socket, and to be honest it doesn't chuck a huge amount of volume out when using with headphones, so obviously the ideal way to use this is with stereo monitoring, and that is why I'm so, you know, I just can't believe that they didn't include an audio lead as an accessory. But anyway, you can use it with headphones, but not a huge amount of volume. Next to that is this 1/4-inch amp output we discussed earlier, and if you get into the menus, which I'll show you in a bit, this output can be tuned, as Line-6 call it. In other words, you can adjust what comes out of here according to what it's going to be plugged into, but we'll come to that when I show you the front panel. Finally, you've got this CD MP3 labelled input, which is a stereo mini jack in, and you feed your backing tracks in here and you can play along with them. There's no volume control to adjust the incoming volume though. You've got to do that on your actual player. Alright, underneath the unit, next to our 4 makeshift but extremely necessary blue tack feet, we've got the battery compartment cover there. That's where your 4 AAs go, and they've added this metal clip, I suppose, so you can clip it to your belt or your guitar strap and, I don't know, stand up and play along in front of the mirror or something with headphones. I don't know, but it's a little bit of a gimmick, but it could come in useful for strapping it to something like, I don't know, a music stand or something, whatever. Alright, and finally at the front you've got the USB connector to connect it up to your Mac or Windows machine when you want to use the editor librarian software, which isn't included. Can't believe that. Okay, now let's look at the front panel controls now. This is, you can do all the editing and everything that you need. There's actually quite a lot of features. There is one thing, you can't separate the amp and cabinet models when editing from the front panel controls. When you step through the 32 amp models, you're stepping through amps and cabs stuck together as a pair. You can't split the amp from the cab. If you want to split the amp from the cab and mix and match amps and cabs, you need the editor librarian software, but pretty much everything else you can do. So let's have a look at these controls. You've got everything's made of plastic. The pod itself and all the pots and controls buttons, they're all chrome plated plastic. This is a multifunction button like you get in the middle of your cell phone. Up, down, left, right. Okay, and it functions for browsing the presets as well as some other things, as we'll see. You've got these 2 buttons down the front which have got various functions, and then your 4 main pots. Okay, now let's look at those first. The 4 main pots by default, without holding down any alternative buttons, is your input drive or input gain, your effect amount, because you can have an effect per patch, a delay amount, because you can have a delay as well as your selected effect, and your output volume. Okay, now this is the output volume for the selected patch, and whatever level you set here is saved with the preset if you save it. So this is not the master volume of the unit, this is the loaded patch volume. Okay, so input volume or drive, output volume for the patch, effect amount, delay amount. And if we then hold down this Save Alt Features button, we get into the second use of these 4 pots, which is then bass, mid, treble and reverb amount. Okay, there's a fixed reverb in there. You can't choose different reverbs, but you can use this to adjust how much of the reverb you want. And it's a sort of medium-sized room. It's not too big and swampy, it's not too small and harsh. You know, it's sort of got a bit of slapback delay on it, or a bit of pre-delay, and it's a medium-sized room which has been chosen, you know, to complement most guitar sounds that you'll come up with. But the golden rule with this reverb, to be honest, is less is more. Do you know what I mean? It's a bit much if you lay it on too thick. Okay, so that's these 4 pots. Holding down this Alt Features button and using this multi-controller button there accesses some more features. Okay, you hold this down and left and right scrolls through the effects. Okay, there's some effects and multi-effects. Okay, now when you've chosen your effect, the amount of the effect is controlled by this effects pot, as I said, but you've got a delay as well as the chosen effect. For nearly all the effects that's the case. There is a couple of effects which knock the delay out because the chosen effect utilises the tap tempo. So for example, hold down this Alt Features button, step left or right, and if I find the rotary, now that rotary effect uses the tap tempo that normally is reserved for the delay. So if you choose the rotary effect, you can adjust the amount of rotary effect and use the tap tempo button here to adjust the rotary tempo, but your delay is bypassed. It's not available when you choose rotary. So there's a couple of effects that bypass the delay, but generally speaking you always get the delay as well as the effect. Like flanger 2, I've got my delay and my flanger amount. Okay, so Alt button and left to right on this controller accesses your choices of effect or combo effects, and up and down is browsing through your amp cab selections, and there are 32 of those. Alright, but there are yet more controls. If I hold down both these buttons, left and right on this multi-controller is adjusting the threshold of my noise gate up or down. So you can get, there's a noise gate available at all times, and you can adjust the threshold to exactly match the output of your guitar. Very handy. While holding down these 2 buttons at the front, if I step up and down, I'm then adjusting my master volume for the unit up and down. Okay, so holding down these 2 buttons, left and right, is the gate threshold up and down when you do the left and right, and when you do the up and down, it's adjusting the master volume, and that is not saved with the patch. Okay, this is the master volume of the whole unit. Cabinet tuning. I mentioned that cabinet tuning thing round the back. That 1/4 inch jack on the back labelled amp is designed to feed into a combo or a rig, or a mono output into a PA or a monitoring system. Okay, and you can adjust or tune it depending on what it's feeding into. Now to get to that menu you need to unplug your guitar, turning the unit off. Then you hold this Alt button as well as the down tab of this multi-function button, so you hold them both together like that, plug your guitar in, the unit goes into its startup mode and then shows you cab select, then you let go. And by default it's in this direct mode, which is basically outputting a mono Line-6 model with the cab, amp, everything. But you can choose D, which is a guitar amp with a closed back cab, C, a guitar amp with an open back cab, B, a power amp with an open back cab, or a power amp with a closed back cab. And once you've selected the type of output, just tap that button and you're back into your normal menus. Alright? Okay, now this button here, as I said, functions as the tap tempo, usually for the delay, but for a few of the effects it's the tempo for the effect. Right, so you know, it's your tap tempo for the delay. Okay, but it's also the access to the tuner. So hold it down for 2 seconds and the tuner latches in. There it is. Gives you a frequency display to start with to make sure it's at 440, because I'll show you you can also adjust some parameters for the tuner. And now I really like this tuner actually. I prefer the display on this to the Pod 2 tuner. You get a nice arrow thing, you know, that shows you how far away from pitch you are, you know, with multiple arrows. And as you get nearer the pitch, the arrows get less until finally you're at pitch. I really like it. Okay, so a nice little tuner there, and it has some extra controls, believe it or not, for this size of unit. Now, to get to the controls, once you've latched the tuner in and released the button, you can't access those extra controls. You need to delatch the tuner and then go back into the tuner. Hold down for 2 seconds, the tuner latches in, but keep holding down. And then you've got access to 3 additional tuner controls. You can adjust the pass-through volume from nothing all the way up to full volume, which is very useful. You can adjust the pitch of the tuner, alright, and it'll go down as far as 436, come on, hertz, and up as far as 445. Okay, so that's kind of useful. And believe it or not, there's even another feature, which is the sensitivity of the tuner here. You can adjust that as well. I mean, it's quite amazing for a product this size and this cheap. Yeah? Okay, and then delatch. The tuner is then, you know, I mean, take your finger off the button and then the tuner is latched and ready to use. So that's how you access those extra tuner controls. You need to hold that button down, and after the tuner is kicked in, keep holding it down. Okay, and then just tap once to get out the tuner. Okay, that's all the controls. So now let's look at the selection of the presets and stuff like that, and I'll give you a few examples of the sounds, and that'll be that. All right, I'll see you in a bit.